that represent different businesses that are all working together on this project. There is an agenda. If you don't have them, the agendas are on the corner up there in the front, and we're going to follow that pretty closely. And we have a break in there set up for you guys to eat, and then come back and have a discussion kind of at the end. But they're going to run this, and if you have questions or whatnot, you're free to ask them. Just kind of follow along, and we'll go from there. This is Terry.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. So yeah, the agenda is basically, we're going to follow this. So before we get rolling, just so we kind of all know who's in the room here, we're going to do a little introduction. We'll go around the table and introduce ourselves, but before that, do we have mainly just staff in the audience? Do we have any just general public here? I'm just curious.
From the newspaper.
Okay. All right, just kind of wanting to know who's in the audience, and if others walk in, that'd be great too. So in addition to just telling us who you are, and we'll do the same with my team on the spot here, it's just kind of good to know a little bit about each other besides just our name. So if you could just tell us, your name, obviously you're a commission member, and maybe a little bit about your background, what you do, as we were chatting with the mayor. And for you all on the other side of the table, what inspired you to community service? So just curious about that. So my name is Terry Burke-Bigler. I am a principal with Confluence. I'm a landscape architect, K-State graduate. Go Cavs. Gotta put that in there. Always got to put that plug in there. And I've been doing this work since '92, so about 27 years now, or roughly getting on 30 years. In our firm, Confluence, we are landscape architects and planners. That's all we do. We're not engineers, we're not architects, so we partner with folks like you see up here. And I've always really been passionate about parks and recreation work. It's always been an interest. I think it's fun. It should be. It's parks, it's recreation. It's a great business, and really being able to help communities provide a great quality of life and great facilities and places for their residents to make memories. That's kind of what drives me. So I'll let you go next, Hank.
My name's Hank Myers. I'm also a K-Stater. I've been practicing for about 17 years now. I spent the first 10 years of my career down in Dallas doing resorts and communities, and decided that wasn't where my passion was. Knowing that being in Parks and Rec and doing a lot of it here, and being back in the state of Kansas where I graduated from and where my family was at, was utmost importance to me. And so that's why I enjoy doing this kind of work today. I have a passion for what I do, and I love seeing things get built and helping communities along the way.
All right, Jeff.
Hello, I'm Jeff King. I'm with Ballard King & Associates. We are obviously part of the Confluence team. We have somewhat of a niche approach to our work and what we do as consultants. We primarily deal with market analysis, feasibility studies, master plans, generally speaking all in the recreation industry. I share a common bond with many of you in the fact that I spent over 25 years in the municipal sector in the park and recreation industry. So obviously that passion has allowed us to develop a consulting firm, and happy to be here and anxious to go through this process with you.
Hi, I'm Dave Hamill with Barker Rinker Seacat Architects out of Denver, and our firm really specializes in community recreation, and my tenure there has been 40 years plus, and the last 30 years my entire focus has been on recreation and community facilities. So that's what I'm all about, is everything from senior centers to outdoor pools to indoor pools, community recreation facilities, and we work all across the country. So really pleased to be here, and hope to help the Garden City folks see something really cool for the future of the big pool.
Hello everyone, I'm Doug Whitaker with Water Technology, and I'm passionate about water. And I've had the great fortune to work with this team in a lot of different projects. And one of the things that I could go on and on and on about, I started off in competitive swimming, got into the leisure pool design industry kind of by accident, and I've been doing this for over 40 years, and I'm still passionate about it. It has a lot of fun because what I see is the multi-generational appeal and how it really impacts the quality of life for a community. And, again, from learning to swim, learning how to swim faster if that's your passion, or having fun at the pool, and even as we get older, coming back to the pool to become young again and have that vitality that we started with. And so you guys are in a really interesting position because you've had a great iconic pool, and now it's deciding where that's going to evolve into the future. We're looking forward for everybody's input. We've started off really great, a lot of community input so far. Now the next step of getting some ideas out there. So thank you for having us. We're looking forward to talking with you all soon.
So we'll start over there.
Yeah, my name is Lindsay Burns. I'm a pediatrician and internal medicine physician. And so I think that informs how I look at a lot of issues, including recreation as it pertains to the ability to maintain health and community health and engagement and just overall social determinants of health. I think there's a big thing for community services such as that and a role for municipal government supporting that. So that's kind of how I approach looking at things. I'm also the mom of 3 young children and a native of Garden City in southwest Kansas, Holcomb. And so I joined the commission very much wanting to be part of the planning for the future of this community and making it sustainable for my children to return to as I did and raise their families here.
Great.
Roy Sessa, I'm the Public Information Coordinator for Garden City Public Schools. Served almost 8 years on the commission. I'm also a K-State graduate. Go Wildcats. Yeah.
I got a feeling we have an outlier where you keep shaking his head.
Yeah. Okay. Western Kansas native, been in the community for over 20 years, married with 2 children. Kind of the same way with Commissioner Burns, just trying to make the community a place where my kids can come back, and if they do leave and go to college, kind of like I did, but come back and live, work, and hopefully raise a family in this community. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Great.
Dan Fankhauser, mayor and architect. Been in Garden City basically all my life. Decided I wanted to give back to the community, and once we sold our business, I had a lot more free time. So I've got 2 adult children, and I've always wanted to see Garden City grow. I've been saying for the last, 30 years, I'd like to see Garden City get to 40,000 population, and I think that was my goal long time ago. So it brings in some good, restaurants, and I think we're gonna be there in a few years. So that's
Great.
So Troy Unruh, I'm the managing partner in an insurance agency, State Farm Insurance Agency. I also have gotten the opportunity to do lots of other really neat things around the state and around our community. I'm married, I have 4 children, so I've got 1 out of college, which is awesome. And I have 2 now in college, 1 at Washburn and 1 at Emporia. And I'm a graduate of Baker University, so.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, I know.
We accept that.
I know, it's myself. So I think, and so I have a unique perspective. I've had the chance to work at the big pool the last 5 years as the oldest lifeguard there. But I grew up in our community and have loved Garden City. I didn't anticipate coming back to Garden City after college because there was all these other places with shiny things. But I'll tell you, the people and the sense of community here really matter to me. And so when I ran for office, it was really about preserving that sense of community, giving something for my kids to hopefully come back, because I don't want to have to run somewhere to see grandbabies. So opportunities here, and like Mayor Fankhauser said, really to create this opportunity and a community in Southwest Kansas that people really want to come back to. This has been a really great process, a hard process for me, because I grew up in the big pool, and being a lifeguard there, I have a different perspective. But and so we're wanting you to. It has to be knocked out of the park for this community to be able to change. 100 years of something And we're still getting people who I spent an hour yesterday talking with somebody for an hour about the big pool. But I mean, so it's really important. But I think these ideas of recreation in our community, trails and sidewalks, and obviously the big pool are really going to be important.
Yeah, great.
Shannon Dick, I'm a strategic analyst with Finney County Economic Development. I too went to K-State. I got my undergrad and grad degree in statistics. I have three.
Surrounded.
I didn't realize.
Have three children, and I grew up here. And same thing as most everybody here, moved back when I realized what a great opportunity this city is to grow a family in and to grow in and to build upon what Troy said with the opportunity. I want to see Garden City grow because of not only the opportunity it provides us, but also the people that it attracts that might not have opportunity if they didn't have the opportunity to live in Garden City. Our city is just a different city, and the more that we can grow that grows for everybody, and that brings an opportunity to everybody. So I'd like to see that continue to grow, and that's one of the reasons why we need to keep on moving forward with our community.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. Appreciate that. It's good to know a little bit about where you come from, because we're going to be working together on this beyond the next couple of months. Our goal is that we come to some decisions by the end of this year that allow you to move forward, and we'll be coming back here for time, for the next year plus, to try to build something new and wonderful. So it's good to know each other. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our process timeline, really items 3 through 4. We're going to try to wrap that up by 11:30. So that's our goal. I'll be trying to keep us on time. So if I interrupt folks periodically to try to keep things moving, that's one of my main jobs today. We'll break, grab lunch, come back, sit down, and then we'll spend the next hour having some fun and talking about the future. So I want to start with just kind of where we're going and what this process looks like. So, we came on board and started this in August. And since that time, some of you have probably seen us, most of you have probably seen us in the community at one time or another. And I would say some of the things you all mentioned, we've experienced already, the sense of community, the sense of pride. And it's not just when we had our formal outreach effort where people were coming to talk to us about the pool, but you go into the hotel and somebody says, "What are you here for?" And you tell them, and boy, they've got an opinion. And so, a lot of times we do these projects in communities where you tell them what you're there for. They're like, "What are you talking about? I don't know anything about it." That's not the case here. Everybody knows about it. I went to the gym and I had about a half-hour conversation with one of the coaches there about how we can't screw this up. So we get it. We get it. So we're in the programming phase right now. Really, this is going to put a bow on our programming today, and so we can start generating ideas. We're going to go over the information we've heard from the community. Our technical team here is really going to share what we've seen at the facility. Even though you have already made a decision to, have one more season at the big pool and then move forward with something else, it's important for us to spend some time really talking about what we see out there today. If nothing else, to reaffirm that you are making a good decision. So we want to spend some time talking about that. That also helps Jeff and his team build a baseline operation pro forma to say, here's what you've been doing. So when we go out to the public, or even with you all to make decisions about new facilities, we can say, here's how much different the new facility may operate. So that's where this data that we're collecting now is useful. We'll generate ideas, take about a month after this meeting to develop initial ideas and concepts based on the program and the priorities you all will help us set today. At the beginning of November, we'll put those ideas out to the public for input and some sort of voting or weighing in on those. We haven't developed what that looks like yet, but there will be a public outreach effort to get some input so that when we come back to you at your November 19th meeting, we plan to do another one of these work sessions. We can show concepts and say, here's what the public feels about these concepts. And that'll be concepts for what facility could look like associated with the business end of things. So what are the operational differences between and some idea of what those look like from a capital and budget standpoint. So it's not just big ideas, it's grounded in data as well. And then the goal is, once we come out of that, we've made some decisions so that our team can start really generating some cost information based on what might become a preferred alternative out of all 3 or 2 so that by the end of the year, approximately, we want to come back to you with a final master plan recommendation. And, you know, over the course of that time, we'll be working back and forth with staff to right size, whether it's phasing, you know, how is this funded, all of those things. And so there'll be a lot of conversations going on so that we can give you the information to make an informed decision. So really, like I said, our goal is to push through by the end of the year. So what we've learned, I'm going to turn it over to the team to kind of go through. We're going to talk about the facility, what they've seen from an architectural and structural standpoint. Operationally, what has Jeff and his team gleaned from staff and the information that's been provided, as well as looking at the market. You know, where do you sit in the marketplace, as well as nationally, what are trends in aquatics and things like that. So we all kind of have a common baseline of information today. And then Hank's going to share the data, what we heard from the community input, from the outreach efforts on site, as well as the online surveying that was done. And then we'll kind of move into the future thinking. So I believe, Dave, you're...
I think it's me.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Terry. You know, this is a really important topic, you know, because it's been one of these things that everybody in this room that's from Garden City's grown up with. You know, it's been an important impact on everybody's life. And so I'm going to fast forward to the end. You know, because it's so important, it's great that you're doing all this due diligence. But what I keep hearing, because we've done this with other communities about their aquatics component, and maybe it's not as iconic as Garden City's big pool and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, the good news is we hear the story, we wish we would have done this sooner. Just because, you know, you get to that next level of excitement, and, you know, right now it's kind of like, oh, where are we in this whole process? And we know that this pool has some challenges, and how we address those challenges are important. But again, the big pool has a rich history. You know, in 1921, Mayor Trinkle really kind of had that vision and kind of, like all good leaders, put that out there to the community. And so by 1922, it was open to the public, you know, and people came and enjoyed the pool. You know, I think during the WPA period, the bathhouse was constructed. And then, you know, the filtration system has been updated. And then in 2006, renovation happened where, you know, basically we had some slides, they put a bulkhead across the pool, and kind of made the pool more compartmentalized. You know, the splash pad and zero depth area was added, and then, was it just last year when the bathhouse got that cool paint job that, you know, everybody was talking about in our public sessions. So it's a really important history, and it's iconic, because I'm sure all of you guys, when people come to visit you, where do you take them around town? And I bet you one of the stops along the way is, you know, the zoo and the big pool. And so it's really important to the community. You know, again, that rich history, we went to the museum and got some of these great images of the pool and how exciting it was. You know, even back in the 1920s when people would leave it open so they could go ice skating on it. You know, that was one of those great ideas. I wasn't around in the 1920s, but I remember in the 50s. I know what it looked like. You know, but back in the, even in the 50s and 60s, you know, people were trying to still keep pools open and for ice skating. And it just, I think you guys realized it very soon. There was a lot of damage that happened to the pools. But again, how important it was, you know, just how things have changed with the diving boards, and you guys had a slide, all the fun features that were part of that big pool experience. Even some of the iconic things that happened, you know, water skiing in 1962, you know, for that promotional aspect. You know, in 1982, windsurfing was kind of the new trend coming from Europe, and you guys had some people, you know, windsurfing on the pool. And then, of course, you know, in the 1990s, they had the elephants that came from the zoo, the African elephants, and enjoying a nice, cool dip in the pool. I wonder who cleaned up after that.
We closed it.
I do a lot of horse pools, and I know some of the physiology of that. But anyway, so it's such a big deal. You know, you've got a place dedicated for the big pool in the library. And, you know, it's really cool to see. I mean, it's very rare to see that in communities where it's been such a important aspect of the community's growth that they memorialize it in their history museum. And I think it really gives us a lot of, foundation to how important this is to your community. So kind of the existing condition review, again, this is how you come to the pool. You see this really cool bathhouse that used to be kind of a WPA type of a structure that now it has a different personality. The confusing thing for me is you don't enter the front door, you come to the side door. When you start looking at the number, a lot of the stuff that we have to deal with is how it fits the code. Fortunately enough, Kansas doesn't have a real strong pool code, because if you did, there's no way you could have that big of a pool with that few toilets or sanitary fixtures. You would have to have a football field of sanitary fixtures if you were really going by a typical code. But again, it's a great facility. It is very large, and it's huge. But some of those things, offer some challenges. And some of the, when you look at the size of this, but one of the things that, this year and possibly last year, we experienced the beginnings and some conditions of water loss. And so it's been very difficult to have enough, the water's constantly going into the pool. It's hard to get chemicals distributed throughout the pool properly. And again, being so large, it's very difficult to clean the pool. It takes, I think in the library, or in the museum, it says it takes 8 people a week to clean the pool. That by health standards, that's not a good thing, because everything that's in that pool that's not human is growing at a logarithmic rate, and so it's hard to keep up. Again, the things that it was really kind of interesting, and I don't propose that I know everything about the pool, but I've seen how it's been used the times that we've been here, and it's kind of interesting to see, that zero depth entry with the play zone there, very, very popular for the community. The other place that's really popular is the splash pad. There's a lot of people hanging out in there. And then the other place that's kind of popular is where that challenge course is with the inflatables. A lot of people hanging out there. And so it's a really great, fun, exciting. When was the splash pad added? Does anybody recall that? What the date on that one is?
Years ago.
Was it like 4 or 5 years ago or something?
I don't know the exact date.
But again, it was a very leading edge design for the time, and it's still, very iconic, with again, that whole theme of the zoo being close by helped direct that component. And this thing, the splash pad is still operationally very, very good. When we start looking at some of the other components, it's been around a while. All the piping is cast iron underneath the ground. It's probably fortunate with being cast iron and metal, but we have 250 horsepower pumps that circulate the water. It doesn't do a great job of drawing the surface debris off. So surface debris right now, because the pool's a little bit out of level, the gutter system doesn't really function like a modern gutter system, so it doesn't really skim the surface off. Even if it did, it wouldn't get out to the middle of the pool because it's so big. And so it's some of the challenges. Our chemical delivery systems have been updated, and you have high capacity chemical delivery systems that distribute water throughout the pool. The interesting thing is, you guys are going through an astronomical amount of chemicals to try to keep the pool sanitized. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but I've never seen this many buckets of the chlorine in one place. And you have 2 very high capacity chlorinators. Your filters are large sand filters, but they haven't really been they haven't been cleaned for a long time properly. You know, they have sand beds into them, you're using calcium. Calcium starts to become a rock over time, you're putting a lot of calcium as a chlorination system into the pool, and you're really not able to fluidize the beds. I know at least on one of the filters right now, you can't even backwash it. So what happens in these sand filters is they have this sand that's in there, water's pushed through it, particulate matter's taken out, and it's captured in the sand. And then what you do is you backwash the filters, which you actually fluidize the bed to kind of disturb it, so all the particulate matter comes out of the filter. Well, one of your 4 filters you can't do anything with, so you're now trying to force everything through the other filters, and so that's an issue. But again, it's time to really think about what we need to do to make the pools operate correctly. You know, our existing splash pad, that's in pretty good shape. I mean, we have a nice collection tank for all of that, all the valves are in there, and then you have your above grade sand filters and all the distribution equipment. So that's in very good shape. So one of the things I want to say, the staff here does a remarkable job in keeping this pool up and operational. And they do such a good job that I think a lot of people in the community don't realize until you started having this big water loss that the pool really doesn't really, it's kind of at the end of its life cycle. And you know, there's kind of 2 life cycles in pool facilities. One is a structural service life, the other one is kind of a market conditions life. And so you guys have done everything you can to kind of take this big pool and add fun things like the obstacle course, the splash pad, the 0 depth entry, some water slides. But the pool is now at the end of its structural life, and it's kind of been teetering on the end of its market appeal life for a long period of time. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But here's some of the challenges. You know, some of the challenges are staffing. This big pool takes a big staff to make it work. And it's because of those big, wide expanses, it's very difficult to lifeguard it. And quite frankly, when you start to look at people and how people play, people like to be next to each other and socialize and things like that. I don't think you ever get too much of a traffic jam out here. You know, it's deep water. People, you know, I mean, they might spend a little time out there, but unless you're swimming laps or just kind of, you know, there's a lot of water space that's not utilized. And so, and staffing's a big challenge because you have these huge, long areas that's very difficult to see. The other thing that you're experiencing is it's hard to maintain the pool. With vacuuming and things like that, you've got a lot of algae and debris that falls to the bottom that it's a perfect breeding ground for things to grow, and so that happens, even though you're using a lot of chlorine. And again, I think your staff does a remarkable job, both from the maintenance end of things, but also from the lifeguarding staff and everything. So safety, you guys have a great safety record, you know, and that's because of the dedication of your staff and the training that I've had to keep people looking at all the pool areas. Even though, I mean, you have a lifeguard that sits right out here, I bet you on a cold day, that's a tough swim in the morning or whenever you have to get out there. Is that true, Troy?
It's cold.
Are you senior enough in that rotation that you?
Oh no, everyone does everything.
Everybody does.
You don't get out of it.
But so again, I'm sure on cool, breezy days, that's a little bit of a challenge to get out there. But again, your staff does a good job of that. So, but again, you can kind of see this was, you know, a good image. It shows how much fun the pool and exudes and excitement. But when you start looking below the surface, it's dark. You can't see the bottom. In most pools, you should be able to put a quarter on the bottom and see if it's heads or tails. I would say that's probably not the case here. And again, it's because the staff does a good job of doing everything they can to make it happen. One of the things, I use the word watertainment. mean, watertainment is kind of that, an abbreviation for all the fun and excitement that happens in the pools, but all the programs. And so when I look at this pool, and again, looking at the people that are here, you see them in the zero depth area, you kind of see them in this area over here. Some people are with the challenge course. You know, the funny thing is I didn't see a whole lot of people when I've been to the pool going down the water slides. I don't know if that's different, you know, maybe more in the summertime. But again, it's one of the, in the splash pad. So again, the watertainment value for as much water as you have, especially out in this zone here, you don't really have anything that really draws you there, you know, unless you want to try to get away. So it's one of the things that think about, what is the right size? Now, I know when you start talking about the watertainment value for programs, having a competitive swimming pool that's at 50 meters in length is important, because in the summertime, 50 meters is what the long course, is what the competitors swim. I'm a big proponent for competitive swimming. It's a great activity. I mean, those guys have great health, and the guys and gals that participate in that, they're usually good students in school, and it's a great activity. But one of the things that this is a pretty difficult course for them to compete at. You know, when you think about having a competition here, the water depths are a little unusual, and the other thing is the judges would have to judge strokes across 8 lanes, and they can't see it from the other side. So I'm sure not too many people get disqualified in lane 8. And then the other thing, so we look at the operational expense. You have high staff costs. Currently, you have high water loss. And water is the least expensive part of it. We'll talk a little bit about that pretty soon. But again, what's really, you know, got my attention is when I was talking with John, one of the operators at the pool. He goes, well, we use between 8 to 15 pails each day. And most, you know, and again, I understand it's a big pool, but that's, a lot of people would, you know, they would challenge that if it was a per week type of a thing, but per day, that's a lot of chlorine going into the pool, and then pH adjustment. So let's talk about the water loss, or what I kind of call the big leak. And again, John provided me, they have a data logging on the valves, and you can see there's a lot of usage of that. I don't think there's any coincidence that this park trough that's, I don't know, about 150 yards from the pool runs with water all the time when we're putting so much water about. I'm kind of one of those, I was trained as a biochemist, so I have this kind of real inquisitive part of me, and I went through there and I said, well, this water's just standing, but I went down the field, and I know that Terry was laughing at me because I started getting sticks out of the way and stuff like that, and you could actually see that water flowing. It broke the dam, and it really, there's a lot of water that's being accumulated in that. And so I know that Fred and his crew at the Water Resource staff, they actually did a data log. I asked them, when we turn off the pool, let's just do a real quick data analysis. How much water are we losing every day? When we turn the water off in that pool, how much water does it go down? And so here's some of the things. Our current pool, not considering the splash pad, is 53,912 square feet. So what each inch of water in that pool is equivalent to 33,600 gallons of water. So when you start looking at this table, the biggest water loss was 6 inches of water loss in a 24-hour period. It's over 200,000 gallons of water. So in a 2-week loss period, when Fred and his crew were measuring the pool, it nearly drained, but we lost 1.9 million gallons of water. And so when you start to think about, well, what is that when you look at a 100-day season? 16.8 million gallons of water lost. And again, if you recall what I said, water is the cheap part of it. If you were paying for the water, the sewer cost, that would show up on somebody's balance sheet pretty quickly. But the most expensive thing when you're paying $3 plus for chlorine per pound, it takes 1 pound of chlorine per 10,000 of gallons of water to get 1 part per million. So you start thinking about that. We're chlorinating the surrounding area, and then whatever we're doing for pH adjustment. Yes, sir.
Can you use gas chlorine? Is that legal now? Or
The answer is yes, you can use gas chlorine. I can talk for a while about this, but I'll try to give you a quick answer. You can use gas chlorine, but again, which is a lot less expensive. It has a different effect on pH than the calcium hypochlorite does. But it's less but at the same time, what happens is, as long as you have public works working with the gas chlorine, you're in good shape. But what happened in the industry is that gas chlorine represented 1% of the market for gas chlorine in the swimming pool market, but it represented 95% of their claims. And what was happening is, lifeguards, untrained lifeguards were going in there in their flip-flops and changing those tanks, which is very, very dangerous, and there things happened and events occurred, and so it was, it was pretty much, it wasn't legislated out, but the gas chlorine maker said, for 95% of our risk for 1% of the market, it doesn't make any sense. So everything else has been an alternative to gas chlorine. Did that answer your question? I can surely explain it a lot more in detail.
No, it's close enough. I just thought maybe it might be less expensive, but.
It would be less expensive until you have a huge claim.
Right.
And then what's a life worth, or, I know I went through this with Disney many, many years ago. They wanted to put in 20-ton, or these 1-ton gas cylinders. And I kind of said, so what would happen if you had a leak? And you have 20,000 people in the park and it's downwind from Blizzard Beach? They understood the ramifications of that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a less expensive methodology. It has some risk involved with it. So again, this is just kind of talking about, what we see in the pool and what is, I think one of the bigger driving things. It's kind of a blessing in disguise in the fact that, we do have a big leak now. Where is that leak occurring? I know that there's been pressure testing of the pipes, and it's hard to, isolate where it's at. My guess would be, from doing this for over 40 years, you've got a lot of leaks. You've got leaks through the seams, you've got weeping through the concrete, you've got leaks in the pipes, you've got the gutter pipes are leaking. There's all sorts of places that it's leaking. So there's some ways to resolve it, but at the end of the day, what we wouldn't resolve is, even if we stopped it from leaking right now, the maintenance and operation expense, we're not having a fun pool for everybody to join to. Like in the past, I remember when I was a kid, we could take a handful of change and spend all day chasing pennies around the pool. Today's consumer, grew up like this, right? They have to be entertained with other things, and it has to be fun, healthful experiences. And so, this is just kind of showing that in that time period, that 14 days, we lost 56.5 inches of water, which is that 16 million gallons of water. So I'm gonna let David kind of walk through the bathhouse with you.
Sure. So, as an architect, we're trying to do a little assessment of the existing bathhouse. And, so we looked at a number of things, and I think structurally it's solid. We looked to see if I find
Storm
cracks,
shelter.
or anything, but what I saw there was foundations are fine, and it's a solid pillbox building. And so, you know, I think it's there to stay. You know, I think that the biggest thing for us is when you go inside, the changing facilities are very antiquated. It's very Spartan. All of the piping is surface mounted, which makes for easy maintenance, but it's less than attractive. So I think that's one of the issues that we see. From a plumbing standpoint, yeah, that's the first time I've ever seen a flush valve run a shower.
It's ingenious.
Yeah, so the first time I'd seen that. So I applied but, you know, as Doug mentioned, in today's environment for codes, you know, 2 showers for a pool that size is ridiculous. I was looking at one of our recent projects that's about, I think it was about 9,200 square feet of outdoor water, and you've got, what, 53,000?
Yeah.
So this 9,200 square foot pool required 7 showers and 7 toilets on each side of the men's and the women's side. So, you know, I think looking at what that size pool would generate, it was ridiculous, and it would never be needed. But by the letter of some of the codes, you would have to have a tremendous number of fixtures. And then obviously the water and sewer service to the building is sized for just a few fixtures. If we ramp that up in a new facility, we may have to bring in a little larger water service.
Can I say one thing? One of the things, the bathrooms, changing room facility is the gateway to your facility. I mean, I know you're using a different entrance right now, but that's the gateway. And so a lot of people with families, if it doesn't have a good gateway or a good feel, they will not come. And so it's one of those hurdles that we have to, I mean, it's really important to understand.
Yeah. So the gross area of the existing building is about, I think, 2,800 square feet. And, you know, in some of our previous projects that are much smaller pool sizes, we're looking at probably a bathhouse that wants to be in the 4,000 to 5,000 square feet kind of range. And it's indicated in that you know, where you enter is in a temporary, you know, shed type building that is not even in the bathhouse. So, you know, I think the space limitations, you know, maybe we could remodel it into just changing facilities only, and then new facilities for the gate and entry and mechanical equipment and concessions might be in a separate building. So it's possible it could be used for changing, but depending on how the organization of the overall master plan might be, this may not be the right location for it. So, you know, that's still in our next steps, that we're gonna be looking at that down the road. And then, so the last point really was, you know, that it might be, also could be used for some other purpose, you know, repurposing that for another use. Maybe the new gateway and entrance is over on the south and the west facing off of the parking lot possibly. And then maybe this could be repurposed for something else. Not sure what, maybe it's a meeting space. You know, if we're gonna.
Birthday parties?
Birthday parties, meet management, if you have swim meets here, it could be a great spot for something like that. So that's just kind of a real quick overview.
Yeah, one of the things I noticed when you go in there, I can't imagine being in that changing room with 40 young girls changing their clothes, talking and screaming. It's, I mean, because the acoustics are just, or young guys either, you know, but the acoustics in there are just, it reverberates really badly.
All hard surfaces, absolutely.
But well coated
Yes.
Well coated.
and
Yeah.
multiple layers of paint.
So I think the next slide, David, is some of the big pool metrics. So basically, the site, and this is just to kind of put it in perspective. The big pool site, when you start looking at from all the way around, connect all the streets, is about 6.88 acres, or nearly 300,000 square feet. The pool and deck occupy 97,000 square feet. The past pool area, when it was first constructed, when it was, before the bulkheads got put in, was 72,600 square feet. The current area without the splash pad is 53,912 square feet. The deck area with the connection points is about 43,230 square feet. So one thing that I always look at from a design perspective, your deck area should be at least twice on an outdoor pool, your pool area, just to have enough place for people to sit. Now what you have is, you have a lot of water that's not used, so you have a lot of deck space, so it could be the right proportions, but again, it's one of those things. So one of the things that always helps put things in perspective, what if, somebody's out there, I'm sure in the audience or in the community, is saying, well, what if we just kind of fix this pool and make it stop leaking, maybe update the mechanical systems? So I looked at the most inexpensive way to accomplish that. If we put a PVC line, so we'd have to saw up some of the concrete, so we could put new piping in to get better water distribution, put a new gutter system all the way around the perimeter. We're not gonna put another concrete pool back, we're probably gonna put the concrete back in, and we put a new filtration system in, but we put a PVC liner system in the pool. So it's kind of a baggy, inside the pool that's holding the water in. It's accomplishable. It's the least expensive way. Probably lasts anywhere from 12 to 18, maybe 20 years. And so if we do that, the bare minimum cost is $7 million. And again, that doesn't add anything to the attraction value. You are gonna get clear water, you're gonna get a pool that's not leaking, and you're gonna get better filtration systems and circulation in the pool.
And that doesn't change bathhouse facilities, any of that, that's just the pool?
That's just the pool, that's the load, yes. Jen?
Would that, one of the things I was just thinking of when you said this, so one of the big challenges is the amount of chemicals we're using because of the water surface area. So how would that impact the amount of chemical that we're using, or the filtration system that's set up to cover that wide of an area?
So this number does include, because right now you don't have a very good distribution system throughout the pool, so that number does accommodate getting a good distribution system, getting good circulation in the gutter, and sealing the leaks so that water, you're not losing 200,000 gallons a day. And so your chemical usage is gonna decrease immensely. Your water temperature is probably gonna go up too, because you're not adding so much fresh water. But again, so this is $7 million that's going to get you a brand new 1950s pool that's not losing water. It doesn't have any additional attraction value. So what I just did, again, I always anticipate questions. So, well, Doug, what would happen if we really kind of, took this pool and brought it into the, today's market? And so if we wanted to keep the same size, because that's one of the things we heard, we gotta keep the pool the same size. I don't know if you do or not, that's a decision that everybody has to make. But if we kept it the same size, but we added a new bathhouse for the correct amount of fixtures, we actually tore out the existing pool, made it the same size, and but there would be separate components. There'd be like a separate 50-meter pool. There'd be a nice leisure pool, water slides, lazy river, but the same size. We're looking at the cost to replace that pool today between $28 to $30 million. Again, it would have today's features in it and stuff like that, but that's a lot of money for a community of this size to invest to get the same size. And so I would be an advocate for at least talking about how do we get the most amount of fun and excitement into the pool. Maybe it's not the same, maybe it's not the big pool anymore, it's the big new pool, but it's the big fun big new pool. And so that's why these two numbers are the ones I really wanted to focus on. Just the bare minimum to fix it up, 7 million, to replace it with the big size is $28 to $30 million. Does that help? I mean, put things in somewhat of a perspective. And again, so if you did all that, you would definitely minimize the chemical consumption. You could decrease the staff if you did got the right size and increase the water quality and the water temperature be warmer without having to even put a heater on it. So any questions on that? I know that's a lot of information to absorb, but it's.
So will you have this available, your presentation, for people to see, the public is?
We're, just for everybody's information, we are recording this entire presentation, and we'll make it available to the public once this meeting's over, and then we'll also make their presentation available as well by link.
Great.
So again, I'm gonna turn this over to Jeffrey, and he's gonna kind of walk
Yeah,
through.
way to kill the crowd, Doug. 28 to 30 million, it's gonna, wow.
Now, this guy's gonna show you how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things we were asked to do is just to complete kind of an overview of the existing operating budget and stuff. Have some opportunity to work with Jennifer on this. And we haven't come to any conclusions yet. We're still continuing that work, and it'll continue on as we move forward with this process. But what we know is that the staff cost increased 77% between 2017 and 2019. Operating supplies increased 274% over that same 2-year period. And it starts to get back to some of what I was talking about. Building repairs, over $120,000 annually. It's a lot of money. Here's the big one. Doug talked about chemical cost. Spending $187,000 for a 3-month pool operation. That's a lot. That is, typically we would see a pool operation, Doug, you could chime in on this, your chemical cost would be maybe 15 to 18,000, maybe even up to 20,000. But this amount is just off the charts.
And what Jeff's talking about is a pool that's more in the 6,000 to 9,000 square foot pool, not 50.
Yeah, nothing that's this large, but the point is, you're spending a lot of money. On
So is our
chemicals.
pools that size around Garden City? Like, is the Holcomb pool that size, or is it small?
The 53,000?
No, the 9,000. I'm trying to picture what that looks like. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
like things like Dodge City, and Libel, and those places. Liberal, sorry. Those.
Correct that sentence.
Libel, yeah. Liberal, those pools are in that 9,000 size category. Holcomb, I think that's more in the, I want to say 4,000 to 5,000 square foot range.
Clearly, based on what Doug said before about the volume of water and stuff, we know that if you were to do something different, there's gonna be reduced water sewer costs. And I get it, it's a city department, but nonetheless, it's still a consumption of water and a consumption of valuable resource. So certainly there would be some savings with that, as well as savings with utilities as well. So just first blush, again, we need to vet this in greater detail, but we're saying that there's easily 200 to 300,000 a year in savings that could be had by the city if you had a new or different pool configuration and a pool setup. And again, we will continue to work to firm that up. We'll continue our work with staff, but that's just an initial observation from the operating side of the big pool. This rolls right into some of the other items that I'm going to be covering, and that's kind of on the other side of the spectrum. What do we know about your community? And kind of getting into some of the market analysis stuff. We will have all kinds of details contained within the report, and I just wanted to kind of give you a high level, just some key findings and a sense for the type of material that you'll be looking at. It starts with the service area. The big blue ring you see represents a 75-mile radius. The green is the county, and of course the red would be the city of Garden City. So we have information in the report on all three of those service areas. I'm not going to be talking about all three today. We'll just be talking about one particular service area just so you get a flair for the type of information we collect. So the first thing we look at is median age. On the positive side, we see the median age is 7.5 years. If you look at the 2019 projections, 7.5 years younger than the national level, also younger than the Kansas level. This is encouraging because who goes swimming? Usually young people. And we do find that age and income are two determining factors that drive participation in these types of facilities. So this is certainly encouraging, seeing that the median age is so much younger than the national level. We looked at the percentage of households with children. In your immediate service area, which would be the city, 43% of the households have children. In the county is 43.9, significantly higher than the state of Kansas. And I don't have it up there, but the national level is 33.4. So your percentage of households with children is much higher than we'd see on a national level. Again, good thing for your business, right? Like all those children. But it's certainly a good thing for Parks and Recreation because there are a lot of children in your community. We also looked at household income. As I said before, age and income are two determining factors that drive participation. And we find here that you're about 16% lower than the national level of 60,548. Further looking at the income distribution, if you will, this table you see down here, this green section represents households with income of over 50,000. In the immediate service area, that's 52%. The national average is 59%. So it's a bit lower than what we'd see on the national average. The other item we tend to look at is this blue section, which represents households with income of under 25,000. Every community has an element of income in your community. Yours at 16.9 and the national level is 19.7. So it's good to understand that. It's also good to understand these numbers from a standpoint of who might be looking for scholarship opportunities or cannot afford to participate in recreation, because you could certainly see if you're in households with income of under 25,000, you're not likely going to have the disposable income to participate in a lot of activities, right? So income is another big piece we look at, but we have to balance that income against what we call a housing expense spending potential index. And I might add that we get our information from ESRI, which a lot of municipalities use. I see the analyst saying, yep, he knows all about ESRI. So they do the calculations, and what we're finding is the overall housing expenses at 78% or 78, the national level would be 100. So this is pegged kind of the national level. So it's basically 22% under the national level. So when you think back, our income was 16% below, housing was 22% below. So actually, it would tell us that from a disposable income standpoint, you're okay with that. Looked at narrowing the focus to age group distribution, and not surprising, you see the first 4 age categories. higher than the national population. So what you see in this first table is kind of a snapshot of your community today. So what this is saying is, your community, 8.8% of your population is under 5. And that compares to 6% nationally, so you have more than 2.8% in that age category. What we typically find is that the younger ages, the under 5 and the 5 to 17, have a direct correlation to the 25 to 44 age group. Right? I mean, that's the child rearing ages. So we typically see the 25 to 44 is higher. Typically, the younger age groups are as well. Not surprising, again, the snapshot when you look at the older population, over 45 in the community is lower than what we'd see on a national level. So the bottom table you see here starts to look at projecting out. Now this goes back to the 2010 census and projecting it out to 2024 and starting to take a look at how did that change over that period of time. And what we're seeing is, even though today we have a higher percentage of people in the 0 to 5 age category, when you project that going back to the 2010 census, projecting out to 2024, suggesting it's actually going to decrease 3.5%.
You talked to them.
Go ahead.
We talked to them about the census. The census was severely undercounted in 2010. We're projecting for the 2020 census, our overall population to be up 17%.
Okay.
So I wouldn't put too much weight in any projections that they're putting out from there.
Yeah.
Especially like when you're talking, we have a positive 8% change for the 25-year-olds, but we're gonna have a negative change in the children.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, so.
Because usually, like you said, there's that correlation.
Right, so I would
The other
not put too much weight in the census.
The other comment that I'll make, and I think you probably agree, if you've worked with ESRI, you know how they operate. The last census was done in 2010. So the information gathered from that typically isn't available until late 2011.
Yeah.
So 11, 12, 13, man, those calculations are pretty accurate. We're sitting out here at 19, getting ready. We're on the cusp of doing another census. So I'm not saying you discount this, but it's less reliable as you get further away from the last census.
And just to be clear, the 2010 census was itself messed up. It was severely undercounted.
Do you have, oh, go ahead.
I mean, there's a lot that could go into it, but
Is there updated information available that you feel is more accurate that we could use to
Yeah,
quantify this?
our census accepted projections on an annual basis are pretty accurate. I mean, they're as accurate as anything out there. You'll see a big dip in 2010, and then everything else is sort of on a pretty smooth trajectory. And it was, we challenged it a couple times. You can only challenge the math. You can't challenge the methodology. We had parts of 2 census tracts that were complete drive-bys and,
Oh, wow.
you know, apartment complexes
go wrong
that
with
were
that?
100% occupied at the time that were counted as being like 8%. I mean, it was just.
So there was a
lazy
series
census
of errors
work.
that
Yeah.
occurred in conducting that.
Right.
You know, unfortunately, that's not picked up in
No.
the source that we're using.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the Commissioner's point, and it's a good one. Just be careful with any sort of trending information that uses 2010 as a credible data point.
Okay.
All right.
Well, and again, we certainly can incorporate the local information you have into these tables.
Yeah.
And that way it's going to be more reflective of your community.
And you know, we run our own utilities. They're based on a per meter count number, kind of per household, but
Yeah.
we're using a meter count that we know whether it's active or not. So it really is how many people live here.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether folks are claiming this as their home, or they're here for extended work, or they're, whatever the situation is, it's actual people present in Garden City,
Got it.
which is probably a good calculation for this
We'll
type of study.
coordinate that with you as we continue this.
Perfect.
Race and ethnicity, I don't know if we've got some issues here, but it tells us it's a pretty homogeneous community, 70% white. The thing that jumped off for us is when you look at an ethnicity, 52.3% Hispanic. And that compares to 12.4% of Kansas. You don't see Hispanic in race because U.S. Census doesn't consider Hispanic a race. It considers it an ethnicity. So what you have is all these people are blended into some of those other categories. But it is important to look at, and again, as we move forward, it's pertinent because the percentage of participation in aquatics for Caucasians is different than it is for blacks, or it's different than it is for Hispanics. So it's important from that perspective for us. So we start to get to the participation estimates, and what you see is average. We subscribe to the NSGA, which is extensive survey work every year in terms of the behaviors of the people that they are surveying. They've been doing this for a long, long time. And so they track participation with three different categories. One is they track participation based on age. They also track participation based on income. And they track participation based on a region of the country. And of course, they also track it nationally. What we do as a consulting firm is we pull all four of those together and do an average. So the average participation for your service area is in aquatics is 16.2%. So if we play this out, 2019, it tells us we got 4,314 swimmers in your area.
Why would it go down? Do you think that the population in 2024 is going to be less?
That's what it's
Or
saying, if you
age.
remember when we looked at that.
Yeah.
And this is what I think the comments were, we gotta be careful when we're projecting out, based on the census information, because
Since you brought it up, go back a couple slides. For the 2020-29 projection at 517, I doubt that 8,000 is the right number. Because that's a huge, it's like more than a 50% jump in 10 years, then we jump it back down. I'm guessing that number there is the wrong number.
3,000.
We're just kind of carrying around a bump up in 2019 through the data. Probably, yeah.
so we take that swimming participation and we start to do some that. And again, we can work on clarifying local numbers, but here's what I wanted to share with you in terms of starting to work to a participation number. So NSGA tells us that 7.2% of the people that do swim on a frequent basis, meaning over 110 times a year. That would be your competitive swimmers, right?
Lap swimmers.
Yeah. Serious lap swimmers like Doug. Then you have
Can't swim on airplanes.
then you have occasional, which represents 41.3% of the swimming participation. Will participate between 25 and 109 times a year. And then infrequent, 51.5%, 6 to 24 times. So if we start to make some assumptions that on a frequent basis, we used 112, because it says 110 and over, so we didn't want to blow it out, but we were a little higher. We kind of cut a little bit in the middle, 67 times for the occasional and 15 visits for the infrequent, and then work that back through the population. It tells us we could be seeing participation of 187,000. Now, again, this is for the year. So if I did my math and I start saying, all right, let's divide that by 12 and see where we're at, it should be in the neighborhood of almost 47,000. talking to staff, we're getting 25,000. So what that tells us as a consulting team is there is a significant margin there of potential. And I think it's the potential, you heard Doug talk about the marketable aspects of it, and I think what you're seeing is you still have all those people that are swimming, they're just going to another community to do that. They're going to where the water features are, they're going to some of these other facilities in the area, and you're not seeing it here. One other note that I wanted to make about this, they also provided information in terms of what I'm calling organized participation, which would be swim lessons, swim teams, that type of thing, versus unorganized. And this is pretty amazing, why people go to aquatic facilities. It's not always for that structured stuff, it's for the unstructured. So I think that's pretty telling. Last couple slides here, just activity ranking. This is where swimming ranks nationally in the activities they track. 47.1 million people participating. It's the #3 activity in the country. We also overlaid activities that are increasing in participation over the last 10 years. So this is information, again, from NSGA, and you can see the activities that are increasing. Kayaking is off the chart. Yoga is very, very high. But we also wanted to take a look at activities that are trending down. You see here swimming went from 50.2 million people down to 47.9, a 6.2% drop. I would not get too hung up over that 6.2 because you're still talking about an activity that's drawing 47.9 million people nationally. But it does indicate trending down.
I'm sorry, can you go back to that just one more time? I was
Yep.
going to.
Golf.
Yeah, I was surprised about the golf was
20%.
You're surprised golfing's going
that
down?
much.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
I have, this is an anecdotal story, but in the last probably 6 months, our firm has been approached at 3 different communities that are asking us if we do any kind of work to repurpose golf courses. Because it's municipalities that are getting out of the golf course business.
We've worked on 2 within the last year, that one in Kansas City and Overland Park, Prairie Village, and then in Wichita Flat. So that are
Where
looking
you exercise and walking and
read about just development, just what's the better and higher use of that land. Some of them are being looked at as mixed-use development, housing, park, take that acreage and turn it into something, whatever. So it's not a surprise
Yeah.
from our standpoint.
Now, the number of rounds, it's going down. Yes?
You said that, I might have just spaced this out, when you said swimming, does this include the organized and unorganized
Yeah.
together? Okay.
Yeah, they don't split it out in terms of the percentage in competitive swimming versus
Right.
lap swimming versus learning to swim. They just kind of lump that all together.
And
Well,
this
okay.
is touching at least one activity a year? What's the threshold to be counted as a swimmer in this?
I believe it's 7 times.
7 times? Okay. Yep.
Well, and I was gonna say, it's, another way to look at it is whether or not it's swimming becoming less of an interest as much as other things becoming more of an interest, and people have a limited amount of time. So they might not want to do swimming any less, it's just they found something new.
We could kayak at the big pool.
Yeah, there you go.
That's next year, Jennifer.
so we don't want to be
Kayaking at the
putting
big
any bowling alleys in.
We'll work on that.
Not at the pool.
pool. No, yeah.
Although it could be a new watertainment, aqua bowling.
Water table.
Underwater pool.
We wanna be innovative here.
But I think as a trend, we are seeing kind of a shift in activities away from team sports, more to individual. So we are seeing that on a national level.
As Terry mentioned earlier, we had 2 different weekends that we've been out here gathering public input at the big pool on the second to last weekend. We set up a tent there and did dot exercises and comment cards. And then Terry was out 2 weeks later to be here for the golf event,
Food truck,
the food
farmer's
truck,
market.
the football game, and
Bulkheads.
the zoo.
Yeah,
And then-
bulkheads.
So we've gathered quite a bit of public input, but then we've also put these.
Somewhere over 200 in person and then another 200 or so online.
250, I think.
Some of those may be repeats, but, pretty good input,
So
I guess is the note.
probably in the range of close to 500 to 600 votes.
Total, yeah.
Total on this, so there's probably some overlap in that, but it gives you a general idea of what we've seen. For the dot board exercises, one of the categories that we put out there were community pool amenities. So things like your basic concession stands, your cafes, deck areas, things that were not necessarily aquatics related. And what we saw is that, and this was fairly consistent with everything that we heard in person, was that shaded play areas and the lack thereof on the existing pool was a huge thing that people are looking for within the community. That also kind of weighed in on just shaded deck areas, a poolside cafe, and then there was also the just general deck seating, that there's not enough deck seating on the existing pool facilities. So if you go out there, you experience it on a daily basis, you see that the most people that we saw were hanging out in the shaded areas, wherever they could find play space. Those were the most used spaces, those were the most active spaces, and as Doug kind of alluded to earlier, you've got a lot of water space out there within the big pool itself that's not heavily utilized because everybody's hanging out in these tight spaces, and it does get overcrowded in those zones.
One thing to keep in mind, western Kansas, the wind blows most days, and those type of shaded areas, I'm not sure would last long with the wind flopping around and flopping those. That's something
Yeah.
to keep in mind. It's a whole different, completely different Kansas City or
Sure.
anywhere else.
Christy, how's that one at the zoo play area held up? Because that one's been there a few years. Is that one okay?
We just replaced it this year. How long it lasted, I'd have to.
This,
Yeah.
all day long.
Well, and that's what,
I mean, we have some around town. I wonder what the lifespan is. That's a good point.
Yeah,
and all that, the actual structure type is yet to be determined, but there are certainly wind-rated
Right.
tensile systems like that out there for coastal areas and things as well.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised our umbrellas, the big giant umbrellas have lasted as long.
Yeah.
How long?
It's been a lot.
Because they've been there quite a while,
Yeah.
so.
But there's definitely different approaches that we can take to bringing shade to
But
the
just keep that in
facilities.
mind.
Yep.
It's-
Wyoming's another place like that where,
A lot of
calm
wind.
days like 5+ miles an hour.
Yeah.
We have more than that, but.
Yeah.
But as you can see, we pulled out the top 4 shaded areas and poolside cafes were in the top 2. Just general shaded deck and shaded seating, and then just open deck were also very popular with the entire community. As far as leisure pool activities for the entire family, the thing that we saw off the charts was that lazy river was the most popular element out of all of them. Wave pool was also a very popular element. And then a 50-meter competition pool was stated over and over again to be a very important element. Now, we know that there was a big contingent of swim team people that came out and voted, which weighs into that heavily, but we've also talked with them a little bit further, and it sounds like that there is a fairly significant swim population within the community.
Can I ask a quick question about lazy rivers? Because I think they're cool too, but I wonder about anything within, this goes to the wave pool too. Insurability, liability costs with those, is that a significant increase or not really? Is that something that's just perceived because of the current and the?
They have to be lifeguarded correctly. And so whether you have a diving board or a water slide or a wave pool or lazy river, I mean, they all kind of fall into that same
Okay.
insurance category. Who's insured?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And
so
the wave pool can only go for so long before it has to be shut down,
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah, it's like twice an hour. And so in terms of the incidence of problems and those types of things, it's not higher than any other
Okay.
type of, but the thing is that wave pools, lazy rivers, and zero depth entries are people holders. You know, that's where, when you look at aquatic facilities, that's where people are hanging out, enjoying, you know, social time together. And so that's why those things are.
Yeah, you don't usually talk while you're swimming in laps, so it's.
No.
I would add one other level or layer to what Doug said. I think from an overall municipality standpoint, I mean, there are lots of risks that you have as a city. You've got, you know, public works, you've got police, you've got fire. It's just managing another risk.
Yeah.
essentially.
Oh, I just didn't know if there was a big differential, because if we choose it on popularity, great, but it's just hard to get invested, and then on the back end say, oh, by the way, this is gonna cost you $50,000 dollars extra per year to insure. That's
Well,
all. That was my only
The
question.
answer is, if you design a lazy river so that it has a lot of obstructions, it will cost you more to operate. That's where good design on a lazy river is, you can actually see a long distance on that lazy river to guard it, as opposed to having all these quirks that have rocks and things in front of it that you have to have a lot of different lifeguard stations. So that's a very important, that transparency is very important.
Visibility of the,
One thing, just final comment on that before we move on the lazy river. This will come up more when we come back next time about program activities within the different areas of the pool. And a lot of people, and this is what I've learned after working with Doug on a number of projects, a lot of people don't realize the flexibility and the diverse programming that you can do in a lazy river. It's not just floating around in a circle in an inner tube. It's, you know, water aerobics and swim lessons, and there's a lot of programming that can happen in those that you don't necessarily see on the surface when you think lazy river. So that'll come up as we talk about why some of these things add more watertainment value or educational value, as Doug has said.
does
So-
anybody have a
Commissioner-
wave pool in this southwest Kansas?
Dodge City.
Do they have one?
They have
a wave pool.
Yeah. So one of the things that, this is a good example of a lazy river, the photo that's there, of a high lifeguard requirement. You know, most of them, that's a resort, you know, but we wouldn't typically do that in a municipality.
Too bad, that's cool.
Well, but you know what the thing is, you can still get the same effect by not having those arches and having all those blind spots. You can still get the waterfalls and all the different things, and making it a lot more transparent and visual.
One other, the last element that was popular within the community was diving boards that we didn't really touch on. And I know that being out there that day, it's always a big deal for the kids to go out and try to get approval to go on the diving boards and be put in the book every year and go through that swim class.
I have a question.
Right.
What is your opinion on, you have 50-meter pool was one of the big ones, but then laps lanes was the lowest.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Generally, I think that is kind of an example of the competitive swimming. You probably got a lot of the competitive swimmers that have come out and voted on that.
Yeah.
And probably not as much of the general public coming out that just use the pool for a leisurely activity.
Yeah, I think based on who we saw at the tents when we were out at the different activities, you know, you see a lot of older folks as lap swimmers. I'd say the majority of the people that we saw were younger demographic, except maybe the farmers market. There, you know, but so just, and again, it's not a statistically valid way of getting input, but I think that's kind of why we saw that. But you can achieve both in a competitive pool, obviously.
So if you do have a competition program, you're gonna have lap lanes, so it kind of one gets you the other.
And that's been
Well,
built.
it seemed like lap lanes nobody wanted, but yet they wanted it in your pool.
Well, you just didn't get the input. And like was stated earlier, the lazy river has a broad base of users, and one of the things that for exercise programs, today's consumer oftentimes wants to do exercise, but they want to talk. And so that's one of the things that lazy rivers allow you to talk and walk and get exercise, whereas when you're doing laps, it's.
Well, now that the new iPhone is waterproof, that's really gonna make a difference.
Just the earbuds aren't.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that's coming.
from water recreation elements, this was more slides, tubes, that kind of program, what we see is that the zip line was the most popular element. And then you also had things like the tube slide, multiple slides, which was kind of surprising to all of us because when we went out there, it didn't seem like the slides were highly utilized that you have existing out there today.
It's kind of like a convenience store. When one person goes, everybody goes, and then when no one's there, no one wants to go.
Yeah,
So it's-
sure. And then Surf Simulator was extremely popular as well. So you've got the Wave Rider, the Surf Simulator within that top four. The Splash Bowl, a big slide that's a little bit different than what most people are used to. The zip lines and the multiple slides. So a lot of high energy, high activity usage.
A lot of people ask our slides, do you know what kind of shape they're in? Did you, I mean, a lot of people have said, can we reuse anything? I mean, did you guys look at the viability of our slides? Are they in good shape or are they in poor shape? And it could be the reason why they're not used.
So the answer is, the slides are in good shape, people are taking care of them. You have some fiberglass flumes and then you have some poly tubes. Poly tubes, probably wouldn't want to reuse those just because they have a low lifespan anyway. But, so what goes on with water slides is today's consumers, like I talked about earlier, it's the Nintendo generation. They have to be competing against each other. So water slides, you go up and you go down that slide, it's a lot of fun the first time. Second time it's okay, third time, got the t-shirt, I'm done, So what we've been doing is putting timing systems on water slides. When you put a timing system, it's like, hey mom, what was your time? You're so slow, or I'm sorry, you beat me. How do you do that? So you get that, and every day you go back and see about your personal best. So that's where you take these water slides and make them more of an attraction for the entertainment and the friendly competition value, as opposed to just going down once or twice and then the experience doesn't change.
So I'm sorry, so our slides are,
I think there's some slides that could be reused, but the thing I would do immediately, is put a timing system to get that friendly competition element going. It's just kind of even with your obstacle course, if you were to put a timing, where you could actually time your run through there, have somebody timing it, and have a timing board on there, you would see a lot more use of that, because now the users are competing against each other to get the best time.
And to weigh in for the commissioners, when we put the slides in, they gave them about a 15-year lifespan, and we are at that. Additionally, staff did do extra work in the last 2 seasons, waxing them constantly to keep people to be able to get through them, because what we ran into from a staff perspective is people getting stuck inside of them, and then multiple kids continuing to go. And so the slidability of them, I think, is part of the issue. And so it was a slow flow through the slides, which is one of the complaints that we get.
Because the obstacle course was really great the first year, but it aged really quickly. Keeping it up and going, it's been a constant battle this year, so I don't know how you solve those.
It's an inflatable so that, again, anything that has air in it is subject to being punctured, maintenance and all the other stuff.
One of the last areas that we gathered input on was splash elements. I know within the RFQ response, there was talk of satellite splash pads, and that's something we can discuss further as part of this process. But what we heard was that a dump bucket was the most popular element, followed by the splash pad playgrounds, and then the splash pad pools, and then also a themed area. So you can see the dump bucket, it can be in more of a pool element, or it can be on more of a splash pad without a whole lot of water standing in it. The playgrounds generally can also be that way, but I think in this case, a lot of those elements can also be just ground-mounted fountain elements that get incorporated into the play elements themselves. But the pool made sense to us because the existing facility out there right now with the elephant and some of those other pieces were the most highly utilized elements within the entire water park today. And then those can all be themed. That's a general element that we can theme however we want to tie in with the zoo or any other element that ties back into the history of the big pool itself.
So one of the things that's really important about this, especially with the wind that you have here, is the splash pads. You have to use not special water, but how you have the features. If you have features that aerosol water, the wind, even at a 5 mile per hour, it takes it away. So you want to have denser sprays so that, you know, it stays in the pool and it's not so subject to the wind.
One of the last elements that we did gather input on is the building aesthetics, utilizing either the existing pool house or if we were to create, like Dave said, something new. Dave, I'll let you weigh in on this too. We gave people an option of 24 different aesthetic parts or options for people to weigh in on, and got kind of an interesting mix of feedback on that. Dave,
Yeah, I think what we saw was a lot of sort of traditional kind of building elements were very popular, and then we got a number of them that were leaning more to sort of a modern aesthetic. And one of the common elements that we saw among a lot of even the modern and the more traditional was the use of wood. When we saw a number of images that had wood in this more traditional way, but there was also one that isn't shown up here, but was a very modern expression, but lots of wood in the soffit areas. This one was showing, again, goes back to the shade idea that there's not enough shade at the existing pool, and I think that was sort of a reaction to that demand for shading. Whether it's a fabric shade device or a more permanent or fixed kind of shading device, which might be more permanent than some of the fabric materials that you have to replace, that's certainly an option. The other thing that we saw was outdoor lockers with some shade over them as well. So, you know, we're seeing a number of things, but it was kind of strange to see this very traditional versus the very modern, and having a lot of people like one, a lot of people like the other. But maybe there's a way to mesh those two to create some kind of a modern expression of more traditional forms, but in a modern way, in a modern take, and maybe would utilize some wood materials to bring that warmth. I think, you know, the existing bathhouse is so cold and so sort of institutional that maybe bringing something that's a little more warm and more natural might be a really good thing that people would warm to.
And most people come dressed to swim and leave dressed. They don't use the bathhouse, so
Yeah.
it's not utilized as much.
And a lot of communities require showers before you enter the pool, or encourage that, and one of the ways they do that is making sure everybody goes through the locker room to get to the pool. That's, again, a way that we can talk about whether that's really important or not. But a lot of them, more recent facilities, you come in kind of like you do now through a gateway and pay your fee if there's a fee required, and then you go back into the locker room if you want to change. But a lot of times we'll put all the lockers outside because people come dressed, they just put their gear into a locker and lock it up so that it's secure. But if it's outside, it's in their view of everybody. It's not in a closed room where someone could break into the lockers, which we've certainly seen in some of our indoor facilities. So that's kind of a direction that we would probably recommend you go.
Can I ask a question about lighting, just because it did kind of jog my mind when you showed the outdoor or the nighttime scene here. We don't have a lot of lighting now. We've experimented with nighttime swimming. Is that something that you would recommend as a trend that's useful for facilities to stay open late, or have you seen that that's not really been a cost-efficient way of using your facility?
So the answer to that question is, lighting is highly desired. If you go to any resort pool, they're always lit at night. And the reason, because it's just so appealing for a broader length of time. The downside on more municipally based facilities has been incandescent lights. The lights don't last very long. So the advent of having LED lights now in the pool water starts to change that dynamic, so that, you know, why not put those LED lights in a pool so that they last a long time, but also provide that nice glow. So you can have different lighting levels, and you can certainly use overhead lighting to light some of the deck areas. I know that Barker and Seacon has a really neat idea where they kind of have multiple levels. You can light it up really high, or you can kind of more pedestrian level, or you can have more of a social level with a lot of water lighting. So there's a lot of different aspects to it, but again, having a nighttime swim, because everybody's life is busy nowadays, and being able to have nighttime activities with a lit pool is certainly a benefit for a community quality of life.
Well, another thing is just being able to rent the facility out for private events. It's tougher to do during the day because those are your operating hours. You can have nighttime rental events. So just another way to program and generate revenue.
A lot of cities are also going to like movie night at the pool. They'll do it once a month, you know, twice a month, something like that. So having nighttime activities is becoming more and more popular, I think, with a lot of the different cities.
And even if you only do it like on a Friday or Saturday night.
We tried, we attempted the movie nights, and we also, we get a ton of phone calls about pool rentals for parties and whatnot. But when they hear that the facility closes at 7 and that likely they can't stay past 8:45, they just don't wanna pay to rent the facility for that period of time. So we do run into, not being able to do that. So we tend to rent for parties from like 11 to 1.
And even though it's hot out, when your pool temperature, when the water is brand new water for the first
55 degrees.
Yeah, it's
And then
static
plug at
temperature
night.
water getting at it every day, it's freezing cold.
But as we look at features, you would recommend saying, make an investment in lighting because the programming and the return on that is gonna be a smart investment. Okay, great, thank you.
So, but we weren't gonna go through all these, but Jeff brought up a good point, so I'm gonna interrupt his lunch real quick to make a quick couple comments on Dodge, since you all may or may not be familiar with it. One thing to clarify, we did actually, it is more than 9,000 square feet of water, which is what Doug had indicated earlier. It's more than that, so I just wanna make sure you're clear if you start talking to people, we realize that, but that's okay.
We've talked about the impact of staffing with the big pool, and in talking with staff, I understand that just at a minimal, you have 17 lifeguard stations, and then if you count the management staff, there's another two positions. You'd have 19 people to guard what you have now. As I do a quick takeoff of that, I'm seeing about a dozen lifeguards. So you could actually have something like that, and it's gonna be more cost effective from a staffing perspective than what you currently have.
We have to blow Dodge out of the water, so I don't even.
There you go.
Are they even in Kansas?
We're about to have a discussion that'll give you a chance to put that on paper.
If I could just say something from a lifeguard perspective and a design perspective, I mean, this is a cool feature, having the lazy river kind of wrap around the pool like that. But from a staffing perspective and a guarding perspective, you have to have a lot more staff along there to be able to accomplish it. You got the same length of lazy river, and probably half the number of people you'd have to have for lifeguards just for that river. I mean, there's a lot of different approaches.
So that's why, when we come back, it's more than just, here's a lap pool, here's a lazy river, here's some slides. There's a lot of creativity and nuance that even goes into how those things can be created that can make it unique and memorable.
How big is that, how big is that building, you know?
Oh,
Got any idea?
I thought they were bathhouse rooms?
like
Yeah.
24 inches by about 6 inches. Is the best I can do for that.
Scale?
Yeah, I don't know offhand.
It looks huge.
Well, Doug, how big would this be?
That's 25 yards by 100, so it's 75 feet by 160. So it's out of perspective because that's in the
Right.
foreground. But I would say that's probably at least a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot bathhouse. Usually that's-
So we've got several facilities that, I'm not gonna show them, but are in here. So when you get a chance after today, you can flip through. We'd hope we'd have more time, but it's good to just kind of see some benchmark facilities. A lot of times, we'll have clients we'll go visit, facilities, whether they're indoor, outdoor facilities, whatever. In lieu of that, we can do this digitally, but there are a lot of facilities across the country that you can look at. But since we've only got about a little less than an hour left, I want to get to start thinking about the vision of the future. So the importance of this exercise today and what we've been doing. So a lot of folks practice what they call human-centered design. And for us, I just call it good design. But the basic premise is we've got the human component. So what Hank went through, what does the community want? What do you desire? What are your wishes? What are your needs? We need to understand what is the human aspect. The technical side of things, Doug, Dave, how do you do it? How do you run it? How do you build it? What are the parts and pieces? We need to be technically smart and technically long-lasting and durable with a quality facility. And then the financial aspect. How do you pay for it? How many people is it going to attract? How do you pay to build it? How do you pay to operate it? All of those things. If we, as a group, moving forward over the next few months, can keep all of these things in mind and keep all of them in relative balance, that's how we're going to be successful. That's where we hit the sweet spot. That's how it's, as I say, good design, good planning. If we get too focused on this, something's got to give. Think of it as a rubber band or a string around there. If you start pulling a lot of it this way, some of these might get compromised. If we're all budget, 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 we might lose some watertainment. We might use an inferior system. If we go too far with any of these others, well, all of a sudden, this might start to be impacted. So all of these things, as you understand, are interrelated. And that's important for us because not every, unfortunately you would think, but not every consultant and every team takes this approach. That's part of what I hope separated us when we first met you was probably this piece right here. We saw in your RFP and after talking to you, you needed this. You needed the study that Jeff and his team will do to help make an informed decision about these two. So that's why this whole process is important. So, I'll get off my soapbox, and I want to hear from you all. I'm going to do the talking and the pointing, and Hank's going to do the writing. Sorry, he's left-handed, so you won't be able to read any of what he writes. So I want to talk about the vision. So I've got a few exercises. There are note cards on the desk or on the table in front of you. Hopefully you all got a pen. Each take two. We've got more, so you can write as big as you want. So the first activity that I want to spend some time on is really understanding kind of your future vision. So think creatively, think big picture out of all that we've talked about, out of all that you've heard from your community over the last years that you've been talking about this, as well as your own personal thoughts. As individuals, this is the opportunity for us to start hearing from you as individuals, representing your community, but then also how do we morph those individual thoughts into a vision. So this first one is really think about what do I really want, or what do we really want. You can think of that however you choose to, and I want you to describe the facility in the future when this thing opens in your mind's eye, starting the statement with I see blank. 2 to 3 sentences, however long you want that to be. We'll give you about 5 to 10 minutes to just kind of think about, when I look at this new facility in 2 years, 3 years, I see that. Yeah, I need to use it.
You did that just so you could finish lunch.
Yeah, I've got time.
Yeah. Now's your chance.
This looks so organized back here.
That way you can see where we're pinching the button over here. There's only one winner.
Oh, yeah, one entrance.
There you go.
Where that's Okay. Actually, this will work out good. Normally we have, but I'll read these, because that way you can't cheat and not read something you wrote. It will take up on stuff.
I was gonna say. Not gonna be able to.
Are you looking
There's one architect in the crowd. Yes, sir. What?
Yeah, you can always tell the architects. They have that weird right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Too many years leaning over a table having to do that. All right. About there? Good
Survey
enough?
says, is this like that match
Yeah,
game or whatever?
actually, I was thinking about doing something
Put
like
the
that.
card down under there and ding.
Yeah.
Survey says, oh, yeah.
Except because I know I really did. I had some laser surgery done on my eyes a week ago Friday. And I'm doing a lot of this reading right now, because this eye is still recovering. This one is
From
2020.
the one surgery that,
The PRK, so this is my second quarter, so it's a little more invasive. So, driving down the interstate, or the highway yesterday, coming down
In other words, you
156.
shouldn't have been driving.
entertaining.
I'm like, I think I got this, Hank,
You
and I
guys
hear
should
him
drive
go,
together.
Yeah, Terry and I should avoid riding in the same vehicle.
When he gave me the nervous sort of sigh, I thought, oh, there's a car coming, I'll get back over. You got this, right?
I don't know about that, Terry.
All right. Just you can take your pen anytime you want. Yeah. Ready?
That's your final answer.
All right, cool. All right, so what I'm gonna do, I'll read these out, but we're just gonna, and we're gonna document these in total. But for now, we'll just kind of pull out some keywords to talk about. So it's important, you know, a lot of times people jump past really kind of thinking visionary about facilities and projects like this. It would have been very easy for us to come in and say, look, here's what we heard, here's some concepts for different things, different options. We don't even know what is important to you guys yet, and what are the priorities. So that's why these exercises are important for us, to really understand what is the future vision. So I see families of diverse cultures having time to spend together to build lasting memories of times during active play. He left, so I think that's right. So families, I think to touch on the fact that there's cultural diversity and memories. Awesome.
Pick out who wrote what. We know each other well enough.
Yeah, and active play. I see a facility that is clean and inviting, appeals to people who live here and people who travel or visit.
You need to slow down a little bit. Hank's not keeping up.
Don't take it personally, Hank.
So clean and inviting, and then.
That's travel, visiting, or travel or visit. People who live here, people that visit. Place to spend quality time together. So I think that's sort of like quality time of the boats. All right. Somebody got a magnifying lens? Yeah, why don't you read that one? Honestly, I can't read that one. I don't think it's just me. I'll be the statistician.
I just wrote it in lines.
People
in the line?
here,
All right.
Are going to the pool.
you want to read that for us?
We know who that is.
I see a regional draw where people who are going to the pool from all areas, much like the Lee Richardson Zoo draw. It's an affordable attraction for everyone to be at.
For everyone.
Dense activity and multiple options, like the lap pool being used as a ninja course.
A ninja course?
Yeah.
Well,
Heck
I'd
yeah.
like to structure that lower down over the, I don't know what you.
Cool, sounds good.
Multiply.
Can't hear.
Yeah. I love it.
I'm sure there's a different name for ninja course
My
for it,
boys
but-
are down with the ninja course, Shannon, I think.
Like you've seen ninja
Vote
warriors.
yes.
Okay,
It's just like inflatable.
all right. So we're gonna cut straight to the chase on this one. Cut the footprint down. I like that one. Less square foot, less chemical, less labor. So
Reduce footprints.
reduce the footprint, control operation. All right, attract people to Garden City. So again, visitors, attracting regional draw, cost effective, that's touched on there. 30 year? I don't know, we'll come back to that one. Need splash parks in different areas of the city. What do you think that's it? Something per year.
Oh, the cost.
I was trying to keep this anonymous.
3 months.
Yeah, cost effective, basically improve the cost per year. Yeah.
I misspelled it, I tried to get the extra T in there.
I'm trying to keep this anonymous, Mayor.
No need.
All right,
We're cool.
I see a water park that is a destination location, so regional draw destination, that not only meets the needs of our family, so local families, people that live here, gets another dot, but also attracts people to our community. So we're hearing that over and over, local but regional, we have an opportunity. And I think that, is reinforced with the market area that Jeff had kind of shown earlier. Safe. And within that, must have appropriate visibility, so we don't need to list all these necessarily, but safe, accessible, or accessibility features, differently abled and different age patrons, so multi-generational, fully accessible, and appropriate chemicals, so safe on that front as well. In terms of features, shade, lazy river poolside cafe. And then one more here. Environmentally responsible. I think we need taller diesels. Or shorter.
Shorter people.
Shorter staff, taller easels. You never win. All right, environmentally responsible, and by that, efficient use of water, sustainable materials. Accessible to our community.
No, it's accessible has a lot of different.
Well, I'm gonna read,
Oh.
so,
I always have bullet points.
I believe it.
so under that, affordable entry fee, concession costs, and operating costs for the taxpayer. So affordable fees for use and affordable costs to the taxpayer. And then finally, aesthetically pleasing. Clean, nice, well-designed structures. So, again, to kind of recap, definitely serving the community, safe, affordable, cost-effective. I don't think that's any surprise. The regional draw, that was something we kind of wanted to hear. I don't know that I necessarily got that clear out of the community, but it wasn't really specifically asked. And the open-ended question, it came out clear here that you all at least see that as a regional draw, which, for cost sustainability, it probably needs to be. Your people are already going to other places in the region for their aquatic recreation services. Environmental responsibility, I think the more you hear how much water is being dumped, it's good that that's the response, is not, that's okay. We need to try to improve that, so that's good to hear.
But I'd like to see other things incorporated as well. I mean, yes, we are all very focused on water, just being in this region, but just a lot of different practices and green building strategies and those kind of things, systems that it would be nice to incorporate, if that's
Yeah.
Are all the pools that
The
you're,
goal for
in
us.
your presentation, are they all municipally ran? Are they run by municipalities, or are they?
In the
ran-
benchmark?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The two we had captured Dodge and Liberal, and then Doug provided a bunch from his.
Okay, but I just wanted to make sure.
Those are all municipally based facilities. no.
Okay.
Multi-generational, available and affordable to the entire community. So this is all good stuff. That helps us kind of understand kind of where we're at. And I heard a lot about fun, attractive, engaging opportunities, optional, diverse play opportunities. So, a fun place. And out of this, we can kind of form basically sort of a vision statement, a fun place attractive to, the entire population of Garden City and beyond. That is, well managed and well maintained. So it's really what we're after. So we have about a half hour left max, and so I'm going to push through these. Normally we might debate on that a little bit more, but this one I want to spend some time on because this is really going to form our keys to success. So this one I want to make sure we have a solid half hour to talk about. So something's going to happen. There are obstacles, pitfalls on the way to doing anything, especially doing anything new, big, and important. It's not as easy as we would all like it to be, and there will be things that have to be overcome. So if you think about this sort of future that you all talked about that you saw, now let's spend some time talking about what the potential roadblocks are or impediments to achieving that as a community or as a group of leaders, city staff. So I want you to take, if you need another card, we've got more cards here.
Thanks, Roy.
Yeah, give me the whole stack.
And you can write on the front, whichever side you
Between
call
the
the
two of
front in
us.
your world. I just want to spend some time, list all the potential roadblocks in your mind that you could see creating some stumbling blocks along the way to success. So financial, funding, community sentiment, whatever it might be. I hear there's election coming up. Maybe that plays into it. It's all real. And this time, keep your cards, because I can't read them all, obviously.
I'm making a mess.
It's just me here. Anybody else think one of the worst things, one of the worst tastes is the green part of a potato chip? I just got one and didn't know it. It just sneaks up on you. One of the pitfalls. Yeah, I know. So Doug, where are you headed after this?
Lisbon?
For fun?
Yeah.
Okay. Getting close. Anybody need another card? You should keep them there. Yeah.
Was hiding your answers.
Commissioner reports, we try not to duplicate what the other guy said.
So you're spending more time thinking about what the other people are going to say.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll bullet point like Lindsay that I'm working on. So I'm trying to bullet point.
I have a bullet point my grocery list.
Jennifer?
Diagnose me as you will.
Do you have do it by aisle?
Yeah.
Just
Okay,
have it
are we good?
delivered.
Shannon's about done there? Yep, all right, we'll go ahead and start. Lindsay, are you
Sure.
ready? You want to go first? So
Yeah,
list them off for Hank and give him time to write.
I've wondered a lot about the site. Because everyone seems to express a lot of attachment to the site, but technically I wonder if that's going to be a good site for us to build or rebuild or demolish existing structures with the proximity to the zoo and the ballpark, and if there's gonna be enough parking. So technically, as we get into really making a plan, I'm interested to see if this is really gonna pan out to be the best site. And I think what was interesting, what came out of Mrs. Cunningham's survey of schools, you know, the majority of the children and the patrons, you know, the age group that we're going for does not live in that part of town anymore. And accessibility to the site for kids, I think is something to consider, honestly. Balancing against, you know, the kind of attachment to that site.
Okay.
Timeline to construction, finishing of this project and opening, I think is going to be difficult. I understand the, you know, logistically, you probably have to close for a season, but how we deal with that or what we do to substitute for water recreation over that season.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's necessarily like a roadblock, but it's something I've kind of thought about. And then I think ultimately cost, which is where you know, with the balance of things. I mean, I think we have to be very realistic about the current environment that we're in, the current economy, and looking at our tax base and those things and what we can make as far as an initial investment as well as ongoing operating costs, and be responsible with that. Not to say that we shouldn't make a smart investment with, you know, a good quality project, absolutely, but also being realistic about that in that balance. So, and I know that'll be the major hurdle.
So, real quick, I just wanted to confirm, so one thing we can do, will, in addition to Jeff's team qualifying census information with city and whoever we can get some qualification of that on, we can pull census tract data to determine. So I think the comment about the target market may not be in the same area the pool is today anymore. It might be worth at least seeing where, so that it may not be anything you want to change, but at least you can review and discuss.
I think you're gonna have to go anecdotally off of that because we don't have enough census tracts to
Okay.
give you differentiation.
How many are there? Two? Okay. All right. So, we'll, again, there'd be a kind of a staff qualification.
Macro, maybe 3.
Blocks get down smaller than that.
Yeah, if that information gets down to the block level, you'll be great.
Okay. Okay.
I
Well,
think some of those subcategories are aggregated into the
Okay.
whole. So-
We'll poke around and see
We
if we can
did
find.
kids by, in the first survey that we did when we surveyed 3rd grade to 12th grade, we had, that first survey was what park they lived closest to. So
Okay.
you may not be able to get, but that may be the,
Well, we have what park they live and where they actually collected the survey in the school, so I mean, that gives.
Yeah, so that's
approximate-
gonna give you- that's gonna give you-
Several different things that we can start to.
that'll give you a good basis, I would
Okay.
think.
All right, Roy?
Really kind of changing the history of our community because it's been here so long. You know, you hear from a lot of the patrons saying, you know, the patrons saying, I remember when I went, or it's, you know, a family thing. So change, you know, moving the cheese.
Yeah,
Pretty
so maybe
much.
not change the history, embrace the history, but
How do we
plan
kind
for a
of,
new chapter or
you
something.
know, how do we incorporate the history and kind
Right.
of keep that there, but move forward? You know, that
Yeah.
kind of, especially in the community. I mean, it's like you started out saying, it's an iconic feature of the community. Where do you take people? It's one of the 8 wonders of the state of Kansas. It's unique for our community, so we're changing that. Funding, I think probably you'll hear that from everybody. Maybe one of the other things, you kind of do we go through all these things, but I don't know, kind of the unknown of not having or designing the right attraction to fit our community. You know, that might be a roadblock on.
Okay.
Where, you know, the thinking of, well, we can't put all the components or the pieces due to the funding or.
Okay, so the right mix of.
The right mix
amenities.
of things.
Yeah.
That might be a roadblock to,
Yeah.
you know, where we start getting squeamish because one faction says, hey, why don't you throw this in from our constituents? Or that might be something, well, it's due to funding, well, you know, along those lines. So that might, you know, again, that human tech dollar component, where you start getting from the people's aspect, you know, we want more of this or this.
Yeah.
It's like, but there's not enough funding for that or whatever, so
Yeah.
we'll be running into those type of things.
Yeah, we have to manage.
But you guys
that.
will,
We have
you
to
guys are
manage
the
that,
professionals.
And that's
but-
where balancing you know, a
Right.
competitive swimming desire with a recreational swimming desire, and we do that. You can disagree and you can not believe data, but data is data. And so understanding that there's some error we have to work through is important. But the numbers for national trends and how things are, what they're doing for activities, that's how we help to right size and pick the right amenities.
Well, and I think just you throwing the $30 million, like, if you want a facility this size, again, it's a $30 million project. That's something we have to get really realistic about really quick. Are we really gonna put $30 million into something? Or where is our comfort zone? Because, I mean, you're gonna need that number from us. And that's our job to find that, and what do we get for the money, so.
Right.
It's a
Absolutely.
sweet spot,
That's right. Mayor,
sweet spot.
sweet spot's a roadblock?
No.
No, I
Sweet
said
spot's
that.
20 million.
Yeah, what is our sweet spot?
Yeah. The, of course, cost of facility. I
Cost?
guess my biggest problem with this
Construction.
is
Project cost.
Project cost,
cost
not just.
for the 3-month facility. Use it 3 months out of the year. That, to me, is the biggest roadblock I
Okay.
have.
Yeah. So it may not necessarily be a roadblock to finish, but it's a philosophical
Yeah, I mean,
conundrum
you
to
know,
overcome.
everything else we spend money on, you know, it's for electric department, for whatever, you know, it's used year round. I mean, our walking paths, they use them till the, you know, it's freezing cold out, you
Yeah.
know.
This is an investment for a quality of life thing for
Yeah,
our
I know,
community
I know,
too.
I know,
Yep.
I know.
That's fine. It all goes
Location
on-
of pool. And,
Location.
you know, the thing is my son now lives in Kansas City, and, you know, they gotta plan 30 minutes ahead to go somewhere or longer. And I tell him, you know, when you come to Garden City, you can go about anywhere in 5 minutes. So I'm not sure, other than people walking to the pool, yes, it's in the wrong area for the majority of people, but, you know, if the babysitter's gonna take the kids to the pool, I mean, it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't think location is that big a deal. We've got a bus service that can run it, you know, and then, of course, operational costs.
Okay.
I mean, that's basically my biggest hurdle.
That's that balance of cost together.
Yeah.
Project and
Okay.
operations.
Troy.
So again, I think it's that losing the historic icon. They've mentioned lots of times what it's meant to the community and what it still means. The cost of the new facility, and then, you know, we've thrown figures out, not spending any more than we're spending already, and I think that added up to about 15 million when they did the calculations. But again, so cost of facility, they don't realize how much these things cost. Changing out the vision for the community around recreation and what it looks like to have a vibrant community who actually exercises and has a life apart from computers and video games and your telephone.
Now, pause right there. Is it changing or it needs? Or you're saying?
It needs to change more.
Okay.
Right, but I don't think we have, the mayor mentioned our trail system is probably some of the best in this side of the state, but there's lots of things that, I mean, we could partner with, you know, we have a great partnership with the Rec Commission and the YMCA, but, you know, overall, our community really active recreation. In our green space, if you look, we don't have much.
Yeah. Okay.
Affordability is a big issue. How much you're going to charge for this? One of our indoor water parks, $30 a time. It's unaffordable.
Right.
And I get this all the time. Is it really that bad? And I mean, you know, you can, yeah. Well, you can show pictures, but I'm just saying, I mean, well, look, it's been this way for 100 years, and is it really that bad? This idea of what's more important that we should be focusing on is, you know, we as a commission, is this really our job to focus on? I mean, we have taxes, we have a housing shortage, and again, all these other things are more important, you know, and yet you spent how many, and I get a lot of what Jennifer's time, you know, is she's spent an incredible amount of time, you know, as assistant city manager going and finding out this information. And we made it a big deal, but other time, how much my tax is gonna go up, and then who should really run this pool? Should it be the city? Should it be someone else? But, and there's a lot of questions so are you gonna continue, you're gonna have a whole nother department to run this pool? So those are some of the things that I get.
Okay.
That's a good question that we probably ought to sort out on the front end of this. As we're talking about operating costs, and we're talking about really factoring that all in, I think that's a really good point. Is we probably need to have a separate pool department, and we need to think about how we want to structure this and.
You can't keep adding things to park and
Yeah.
rec. I mean, you've got to be careful about how much you spread and.
That ought to be part of our whole calculation
But
there.
I'm not sure it's a full-time position.
Well, we can help you with some examples of how other places do it.
Well, if you could
So-
use it more than 3 months, if you could extend the whole cycle of it, I mean, anyway, at all would
You
be.
wanna swim in the winter?
Well, no, but if you had, I mean, I'm not saying like the dome the Y has, I mean, you could put one of those over the pool and you could use it year round. I mean, I've seen those in other communities, I've swam in those. But I mean, that's.
So how do we phrase that concept as a roadblock?
Well, I think the mayor said it best. I mean, it's a 3-month facility.
Okay, so.
I mean, a 3-month expensive, I don't know how many, $500,000 facility we use for 3 months.
But just as put
Yeah.
that in perspective, I mean, for what it's worth, you know who swims in Florida outdoors in the winter? Tourists.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But, I mean, locals
Don't.
don't go swimming in Florida or California.
We only have one indoor option as far as a lap pool.
Yeah.
And that's all we have.
That's why I said outdoor.
Yeah, oh. yeah.
Indoor, it's a different story.
Okay.
Okay, Shannon.
A lot of the same I've cost a couple times, but you can just put one dot. But it's cost of, the cost of running and all that stuff. And again, replacing the big pool as an icon.
So-
How do we stay true to that while still being good to it? One thing they haven't said yet is religious issues. I know
Yeah.
we have a growing population of Muslims that have different abilities to participate, so making sure that we allow all participations, not just, and it's not just an ethnicity, it's a
Right, it's a religious faith-based,
Right.
faith and cultural.
So making sure that's designed in a way,
Yeah.
and I think we got that kind of worked out with our splash park now, but.
Okay.
Competing views, like they said, like competing between swim team and all that stuff. How do we manage that? Weather, like it's been said before, we have windy, dusty, hot weather. So that's gonna be different than other places. And then looking at current and future building facilities, most notably the Star Bond and the Star Bond area, and how that would relate. I mean, we'll get more teams, travel teams coming in. How can we translate those people coming in to use the facilities that are in that area, but then also translate into, during the summertime, coming down to the big pool and using that as well? So making sure it's attractive to people that are coming into town, not just for
Yeah.
that.
So make sure it's complementary and can be leveraged and not
Right.
compromised.
Not competing, yeah.
Okay, so as soon as he wraps this up, now I want you, we've got 16 minutes left, and then I got a hard stop. So we're gonna take this, and you don't have to write anything down, we're gonna do this as a group. We're gonna talk about what are the countermeasures to each of these. And what ultimately happens is these countermeasures are gonna begin to form our keys to success for the project. So, site constraints and parking. Countermeasure is good design. I'm just gonna cut to that one.
Yep.
That's why you hired us. Smart planning, smart use of the site, or a site. And then also, I think it's worth at least doing a quick check. Right site. So, right place, right size, right design. Proximity, so timeline. So the timeline, I think, again, it's sort of on us, but I will tell you the delay factor will not come from us, it will come from decision-making, it's typically the case, and funding availability. So if timeline is an issue, how do we, you don't have to kind of exactly spell it out, but how does this group avoid timeline issues?
Do you, just to be clear, do you foresee that we're gonna be closed for a season? I mean, it's gonna take a year. to
So
close
right
this?
now, what's been
Let me
talked
just
about
construction plan.
is, right now anyway, what we've been told is you've decided to close it after next season. So 2020, shut it down, and this is all real quick and dirty, tear it out. We believe that by then, we can have a facility design, you start construction the day after it closes, demolition and construction, it's conceivable to have a facility open the following season.
Oh, okay.
So, but
I didn't realize.
that takes all the dominoes falling into place at the right time.
Sure.
Well, I think that the timeline is going to be predicated on getting the information and making sure we have time to make decisions.
Right.
Because I think,
So
we are.
timely decision making.
Because we are representatives of, citizens, and so, if we have the information ahead of time, it's much easier to go out and check and, and ask for some input, so that people feel involved, but if it's like, oh no, this is the last minute, we need that won't work for me.
Okay, so we have to keep you
Yeah.
informed and educated.
I think you need to be ahead of it so that we can be on time, so you
Right.
need to be ahead so we can be on
Okay.
time.
What else can we do, or what else keeps you on time?
We need a lot of information continually coming out, because I think a lot of people, our website, and we can push it through lots of others, but like this presentation, those things, I think, the more that we can inform and say, hey, here's this, so you can send it back to somebody, that's gonna help a lot.
Okay.
Do you think a bi-monthly update, like as an agenda item?
That would be nice, after we,
Not bi-monthly, every 2 months. is what I
right,
meant
yeah.
to say, not
Every other
bi-monthly.
month, yeah.
So
That's
I'm
a
gonna put
little
all that
frequent.
into, I'm gonna put all that into a communication
Every-
bucket. We have to communicate, not just you all, we have to communicate to the community.
Do you foresee us having to do like a mini campaign almost, kind of like we did with the utility bills and those kind of things? Trying to kind of gauge a public appetite for a number, an investment? No?
Well, I think they're concerned if it goes over the amount we're paying currently. I think I've heard, so they are shocked how much we pay annually already for the pool, if they ever look at it.
What is 300,000 a year, which is basically, rough idea, what we're spending, what does that equate to in millions of dollars?
We're
say?
spending way more than 300,000
Yeah,
a
it's
year. We're
almost
spending
half a million.
750 to 850,
Right.
depending on the year, is what we're spending currently.
Okay, let's say
Um,
500,000.
Right.
But 500 gets you, I think, in talking to Melinda, it's about 8 million-ish.
Over-
Yeah, I think the
Over
pool, the offset
20.
number of a project you could do that offset was more around the 7 or 8. When
Yeah.
we showed kind of what's the debt service look like at
Yeah.
5 million, 10 million, 15 million showed that, but what we could replace with what we're spending now, I think our gut instinct was a 7 million.
Yeah, it was like
$6,
seven,
$7, $8
by the
million
time you
project.
took the difference between revenue, expenses, and then debt service
Emergency
altogether,
repairs.
yeah, everything into that consideration, you were talking somewhere around
And we've never
8
had a
million.
facility that's made anything. It's always cost money. It's never made, and
Never
we've heard
will.
reports that, well, right, but the reports that actually can generate income.
It can come closer to,
So-
Right,
we haven't ever talked about it
Well, I'm
making
saying
money.
decreasing that amount that we're spending. so.
The answer is, it depends what you want to charge for operation, or, have people come into it. So that's where the balance comes in trying to, how do we get more people to make it affordable in the community versus the rate we're charging? And so
Yeah.
that's a delicate balance. That's why Jeff's on it.
Well, that's a number, we're just gonna have to decide what we're comfortable with, making investment, knowing we're gonna subsidize this as an investment in our community.
Right.
Whether that's another 10 million on top of what the offset is, I mean,
Right.
that's what
Yeah.
we're gonna have to come up with, I think, pretty quick, because that's gonna impact your design.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we gotta get that sorted.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so budget, figuring out budget, that can be a huge timeline derailment. And budget affects a number of other things in here. When we look at water attainment, attraction values, things like that, I'm just gonna jump some of those up to say budget. And that's what Jeff and I were arguing over the table this morning at breakfast. He's telling me he wants the number now, and I'm saying, Jeff, we can't get the number now. No, he's not. But he wants.
I want to know the number.
He wants to know the number now, and I said, no, I'm gonna be optimistic and say, that's not the number yet. So, but we've gotta get there soon, and that's,
Ballpark.
we need to have some real discussions about that. So how do we balance, I'm gonna put this into an operational cost. Okay, so how do we, moving forward, long-term, how do we balance and control operational costs? It might be anybody at this table, you guys.
Oh, again, that whole green design idea, with energy efficient motors and filtration systems and chemical systems, all of that helps reduce your cost. So that's utility cost. The other thing is, your highest cost is staff.
Staff, clearly.
And so it's really important to design it as transparent as possible, so you don't have to have staff to look around corners or have additional staff.
Would a good starting place today be a ballpark square footage and like determine a footprint? Because that will sort of dictate what our budget is, that'll dictate what features are available. I mean, would that be helpful?
I don't know if you,
In that.
I don't know, I think we need to come back to you with some options on that.
Okay.
Because right now, we don't have enough time in the next 5 minutes to really do that.
Okay,
And that's fine, it's not time for that yet anyway.
okay.
Programming the fit to the community, that's on us, really, by and large part. I mean, it's ultimately your decision. We're gonna give you options. But I think it comes back to us making sure that we're continuing to listen to the community, getting input from the community, so engaging the community, which you're doing. And I'm gonna put that up there because not everybody, every leadership body wants to do that. So when we come back with options, if we're gonna have slides and we're gonna have this, here's our budget, somebody's gotta make some choices. We can engage the community in that discussion.
Well, I'd encourage you to work with the rec commission and the YMCA. I mean, I would collaborate. Honestly, I think
So
it'd be a smart-
collaboration is key.
With community entities.
Yeah. Yeah, so more of the stakeholders. Okay. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the seasonal facility investment and the concern over, and really, I'm gonna take it away from just the seasonal aspect, prioritizing the investment of tax dollars or the prioritization of municipal investment. So, you guys have to make that decision. Is it important? How important is it? And what are the benefits? So the cost benefit. If this pool goes away and you have no replacement, is that a problem in your community?
Probably.
Probably, yes,
Yes.
most likely?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So that doesn't tell us how much to spend, but it tells us something has to be done. Okay. So the question that we'll ultimately want to get to, maybe not today, is what does that look like? So it's important for quality of life, for economic development purposes, for attraction, and just for your residents as a service, to have that, whether it's health and wellness, fitness, or just plain recreation, having fun and social, socializing. So, is there a concern in the community that needs to be addressed through communication about why that's a wise investment?
No, it needs to be concerned that this is no longer a viable option. That's the big concern.
So the information we shared earlier, that's why we wanted to go through that. So hopefully that gives you all some additional data to share with the people that are asking you. So if you're having town hall meetings, whatever you're doing, you can share that. So that helps to spread the message of the facts and the data. So communication is still key for that. Okay. Location of the facility, we talked about that. Let's see, affordability. So how do we, if that becomes a stumbling block, so what are the ways that could create issues? Making it affordable to all could compromise the operational, how much are you willing to subsidize for the affordability? From an operational standpoint, as we said, the more transparent, the fewer staff, it can, I'm gonna say the word dilute maybe, some of the cool creative stuff. The simpler it is, the fewer staff you need. Some of those are the things. So I think the question here is how do we envision addressing affordability? Is it only gonna be through cost control?
Can
What are some options?
I take a different tack on that?
Mhm.
The other part is because it was the free pool, then there was a charge to go to it. And so that tying that whole thing to history and changing the perspective, and then, if you go to the water park at the hotel, $30 a day, that, I heard the term, that's not affordable to a lot of people. So, is the direction that we're not gonna charge for this, or we're gonna have a charge, but it's gonna be reasonable, but it's not gonna be free, and it's not gonna be $30 a day, but it's more based on market type rates that we see in other communities.
Well, you can do a seasonal pass.
Yeah, yeah.
So the countermeasure is make it attractive enough for people to find money to pay.
It hits the majority of the people.
The other thing that people recreate, I mean, movies are a big deal in here, so that's $350, but the movie theater doesn't seem to be having a problem, filling that with a lot
I
of
hate to make
kids.
some assumptions on that, though. I mean,
Well, I don't know.
when I look at this whole project, I mean, the whole reason that we are, and we look at like what the functions of government are and what our responsibilities to citizens are, and maybe that's changing. Maybe what municipal responsibilities aren't what they were even 20 years ago. But I think if we're gonna do this and we're gonna subsidize it to whatever level, we have to say, our goal then is to serve the most number of people, and we know, we were told multiple times from multiple entities, $1 more, or more than $1 a day doesn't get the job done. And so we almost have to look at this like, this is a 99% subsidy, and not make assumptions about, well, maybe so-and-so, or they have this much disposable income, or this or that. I mean, I think that we have to either go all in and say, we are doing this as a community service, as a responsibility of municipal government, not as a business plan. I mean, there's some, I get it, there's operations and those kind of things we have to consider, but we're not in the same kind of, we're not in the same market, we're not going after the same folks that the water park is, or those, I mean, that's a totally different thing. And nice if people come and stay here, but we're not a destination either. We're here to serve our community. Cool if other people wanna come, but again, I think those are completely separate. I hate to keep bringing the water park into it because I know they're very concerned about competition. They're serving different people. I mean, it's a different, it's a tourist, it's a destination, there's gonna be a whole bunch of stuff over there to draw for them. I mean, if we're gonna keep this down at the park, I think we really need to know who we're building this for. And then that informs a lot of this.
But
I think we're, yeah, okay.
But you said $1 a day. So $1 a day for a 100-day season, that's $100. You know, or is $1 the threshold for, you know, so again, for a family, if you could do a family pass for $100 for the whole season, then that makes it, when you start to break that down, it's pretty reasonable as opposed to, you know, I'm just picking numbers out of the sky, but let's say
$5.
$5 or $7 if you don't plan ahead, you know, then, you know, you can buy a punch pass or something, you know, so there's ways to make it affordable, and there's also scholarships.
And I think, you know, we're looking at this right now as kind of a micro issue. If you looked on a macro level, it would be, what is the policy, you know, fee policy for the city? How does this fit in? So is it more appropriate as a governing body to set policy and that you'd like to see X percent of variable cost recovered, or whatever that is, that then could be applied to those
Yeah, I think
operations?
that's
Because it goes back to their statistics of the, you know, the 110 plus, that's the lap people, then you got the 50 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then you got the kids that go to, you know, probably. Occasional. I mean, we're not looking at they go well, some people might go every day during that 100-day season, but, I mean, it's not the lap people that are going, I mean, that are going to run at laps, it's the thing too. I mean, we need to make it a destination for our families to meet, but
I think there's some good
I
policy.
think we're,
You're right. We need to say.
I mean, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot on the funding thing. I think you guys kind of, I mean, funding's important, don't get me wrong, but let's see what you guys can come up with this and bring it back to us and report on. I mean, we kind of know we need to do something. One, we need to do something. The pool's outdated, outmoded, we're spending too much money on it. Give us a solution on how to update it, upgrade it to fit all these components is what we're really looking at.
What you're saying is they're the experts, let's
right.
listen.
So 30 seconds. What about the year-round issue? How important is that? How do we address that?
The lap pool is the only thing I think could be year-round.
Yeah, could we do a 50 millimeter, or
The lap
50 meter?
We can do a
A
50
50
millimeter.
meter covered indoor?
Well,
Yeah, that's the only thing I think that you could be, if you really want to change the recreation, the whole look of our community, that's one way to do it, because there are not places to recreate.
I would say,
is it important?
That might be worth
No.
more
Is it
investment.
important?
I don't think we can
As
afford
part of
it.
replacing the big pool, it is not important, because that is not what the big pool is right now. Is it something that we could consider?
as
Or
an
find
addition
additional
to,
funding.
or
Or
something
something
else,
else, but I
skating,
guess-
maybe.
but I
Is that
guess-
a possibility?
but I guess
No, I would not in the, I wouldn't do it in the pool, Doc. You want to ice skate in the pool in one of these?
No.
I've seen splash pads
Yeah,
become
Roy,
ice
you had
skating
another
rinks.
comment?
But I
I'm sorry,
guess-
I'm just trying to keep, I know
No,
you guys
I
got
guess,
to meeting.
but from, the big response that you got from that kind of
Yep.
organized swimming group, I think it's something that we might need to look at.
You still have to consider it.
We need to probably look at it, because that could be part of our destination location thing of bringing people into our community, which it is a recreational thing, and we do have swim team, we have a girls and boys swim team. I
Yeah.
mean, there's Holcomb that's looking at an indoor facility. They're talking about something like that, and,
Yeah.
so it's something that we need to probably look at as a community. I mean, we don't have to, as a commission, we can look at it, but we don't have to approve it. It's something that we probably need to look at, because it was one of the higher marks on the thing, and if we want to listen to our community,
Well,
I mean, that's what we
then
need
what
to
about
do.
this? When Jennifer did her thing, ice skating rink came out more than any of that stuff.
so we need
but
to
I
do an
mean,
ice
we-
skating rink? Is that what you're saying?
Well, if you're
now?
saying, let's listen to our community, that's, I mean, there's a very
Yeah,
specific.
but we're,
I
They
mean,
take
you're
a
doing
piece of
some-
plastic and line it over
No,
a two
it's-
by
it's
six,
the-
fill it full of water and it'll
you
freeze.
got my 2 cents, so.
And that's our ice skating rink.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good? Thank you.
Grace, anything else you need?
No, well, yeah, but
And that's it.
I mean, more
Thank
stuff
you.
we
wanted to know.
No, we're good.
Oh, I think it's exactly what we wanted to know.
Computer.
I just